Oh, once again, a warm welcome and a very good evening to Flight Sim and other stuff and the news. First things first, there was no news programme last week. For those that are inside Europe, you'll probably guess why. It was the European Cup finals. Not that I'm a football fan, really. I'd rather watch cricket, but it was England playing. I won't say anything about the so-called supporters. Well done to France, and England are going to do a lot better in the World Cup next year. Excuse me. Anyway, enough of football. The channel. A couple of changes I've made. I had some feedback. The camera. So the camera is now different, and hopefully a little bit better quality. I've been looking around for a decent cam, and I can't afford, to be quite honest, an SLR. And I've tried several different webcams. This is, oh god, there we go. I should have practiced this one. Yeah, just not the phone. There we go. So this was the one I was using up to last week, and everyone says that this is a good entry-level webcam. It's might have been good several years ago. I find it a real pain. Doesn't matter what filters I put on it, it never sounded right. Not for me, and never looked right. It would wash out the colours. Getting the green screen to work properly on it was a real pain as well. So I'm using the iPhone. The second change was the microphone. So I was using a USB microphone. That has all changed. Move it up. So we've now gone up market and bought a slightly better microphone. And for those that gave me feedback on the microphone not sounding too good, hopefully this is better. And if it isn't, please give me the feedback. I just want to try and make things as comfortable as possible for anyone watching. So what's in the news? What's happened in the last couple of weeks? Well, on the last show I passed some comments about Microsoft Flight Simulator, and is it a game or is it a simulator? And I think a couple of people slightly misunderstood what I was getting at. I've got no problem with it being a game. There are lots of advantages. Because it is a game, the people that make freeware add-ons, like the Mario Kart, that's not a good example as far as I'm concerned, but there are an awful lot of good hackers, developers out there improving the product, so that's really good news. All I was on about is, from my point of view, I want a simulator. I want something that gets as realistic as is reasonably possible for a home simulator. And I've made the move from X-Plane. 90% made the move. I still fly my helicopters in X-Plane, although the B-47, as I've mentioned before, is an excellent helicopter for Microsoft Flight Simulator. But there is good news. There is a study level, or is it a study level, airliner coming out. You must have seen it. If you haven't, I'm going to talk about that briefly. A couple of mapping applications. Now I use Navigraph charts for my map inside the cockpit. It works in VR now in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and in X-Plane, of course, it integrates exceedingly well into Avitab. But there is a recurring cost for Microsoft for Navigraph charts. So a couple of free alternatives. One of them based on the exceedingly good little nav map, and another one which is just a browser based one. There's been an update to ATC Pro on X-Plane, ground handling for the Zebo, something there, and as I said, that study level, or is it? So that's what I'm going to talk about this week. So let's jump down straight into the news. So those that have been looking around the channel for a while or been watching me in the past will know that I'm I'm a fanatic on the Stream Deck. I just think it's a brilliant product. So much so, do other people think it's a brilliant product, that FlightSim.to, the place you're going to go for most of your Microsoft add-ons, have now put all the Stream Deck add-ons, profiles, whatever you want to call it, into its own section. So under miscellaneous Stream Deck, that's where you want to go now to get the latest Stream Deck plugins, etc. The very latest one being these warning gauges. So if you don't have the honeycomb throttle that's got most of these lights on it, or the SATEC BIP, there you go. Now, if you've yet to dip in to using Stream Deck yet, don't forget, hi Bo, nice to see you again. If you haven't seen or you haven't dipped your toes into the Stream Deck world yet, and you don't want to start off with the entry level one, that small 15 key one, you can get it for nothing. Well, you can get it for a very reduced cost by buying the app that works on a phone or works on a tablet, and it's both on iOS and Android, I believe. So Stream Deck Elgato do have a phone version. If you want to give it a go, have a look at that. So on to the maps. The first one I found was at MFS add-ons. So like I said, if you don't have a moving map, you don't have Navigraph charts, which is a moving map for you, then this is pretty good. And it's all done in a browser. And it's got all the airports there. It's called FSX Map. So that'll give you a hint straight away that this is going to work with any simulator. Or should work with any simulator. It's completely free, and if you go there, you can, if you go to MFS add-ons, you can download this. Let's get rid of that. So it gives you the runways, it gives you all the stuff you need, and it plots your route in real time. So there's one option. The next option is based on Little Nav Map. Now there is on FlightSim.to a Little Nav Map plugin for the toolbar in Microsoft Flight Simulator. This one comes from flightsimulator.me. Now you do have to pay for this stuff, but it's a one-off payment and it's a site subscription, so you can subscribe just for 1 month and download as many of his plugins. I've mentioned the guy before. You can download as many of these plugins as you want, and once you've downloaded it, that's it. You don't have to pay any more. It'll run forever. So you can buy a subscription for 1 month, or you can buy a subscription for a year, or if you really want to support him, you can buy a lifetime subscription and download what you want when you want. Anyway, this plugin for Little Nav Map is, in my opinion, a little bit better than the toolbar one that's there at the moment on FlightSim.to. Although you do have to pay for it. I like it because it works terrifically in VR, and as you know, I'm really into VR. So have a look at that one, in-game panel nav map for Flight Simulator. That's for Microsoft. Moving over to the world of X-Plane. Now I gave this one a mention 4 or 5 weeks ago, ATC Pro. Now, when I want air traffic control, I'm using Pilot to ATC for the most part. I'm not confident enough to fly online. Well, that's not strictly true. The couple of times I have flown with VATSIM, the problem is trying to find somewhere where there is a controller where I actually want to fly. That doesn't seem to be there very often. And the 1 or 2 times I have flown, now people tell me it's got a lot better, but I just found it very hard to understand what they were saying, and when you're in VR it's even more difficult to make notes, so being absolutely clear on what they're saying. And I just wasn't all that happy with the experience because I didn't know what to say, and that's why I took up Pilot to ATC, because hopefully it's going to teach me. Well, this product for X-Plane ATC Pro 1.2 actually tells you what to say. So you can put in whatever you want. You want to request a flight level change, you want a VFR flight, you want an IFR flight. You put in, press the generate transmission, and it'll tell you what to say. And when they give you the read back, you can start making the notes in the application, and it will tell you what to read back to the controller. So and he's just updated it. He keeps updating it, and I think this guy, and he's obviously a very young lad, is doing a brilliant job. So if you are flying X-Plane and you want to give it a go to fly with VATSIM, and we should all do more online flying. It's flying alone in your bedroom or your home office like I do. Sometimes it gets a little bit lonely. Flying the real world with VATSIM, yeah, I'm going to give it another go as long as I can remember what I've got to say and when I've got to say it. So ATC Pro, mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, giving it another plug because it's just been updated, and I think this guy needs the support. Next one. This is a really simple little file. It's not doing very much. It's for the Zebo in X-Plane, and if you've got the ground handling from Jar Design, I've got it, and I like it. Just adds to the realism. The Zebo's pretty good. It's not study level 100%, but it's pretty good. And while you're doing the pre-flight checks and programming the FMC, etc., it's pretty good just to have the passengers loading, hear them getting on board, the baggage, the fuel, etc. And if you do a walk around, and I usually do a walk around as well, to see all the stuff happening outside is great. And Jar Design's Ground Handling Deluxe has a control panel, and you just select drive up all, and you see all the vehicles drive up. This just takes that having to use the control panel away. So you just open the doors and everything happens, and when you close the doors, everything disappears. You don't have to press. So it gets a little bit more realistic because you're not controlling the panel. And finally, and the most exciting thing for me, and I just can't wait to get my hands on this, it is a study level, but it's not study level, they're saying. It is an exceedingly competent, full-featured A320, more featured than the fly-by-wire. The work they've done on this, if you look at some of the screenshots, are amazing, in as much that when you get into the cockpit, there's wear and tear. It's not pristine, brand spanking new. It is scuffed. There are scratch marks. That's not that impressive. But the amount of detail they've gone into on the displays, this is a well-known feature I didn't know about, but apparently if you're an Airbus pilot you'll realise that this is a well-known feature. There is bleed on these displays. You can see the light bleed if you view it from the side, and that's captured, and I think there's a screenshot showing some of this. We'll have a look at that in a second. On the navigation, so we all know that it's using sat-nav, and of course when you're flying the fly-by-wire or you're flying Microsoft, you get perfect reception on all satellites and you know exactly where you are all the time. But that's not what it's like in the real world. You will lose position. You will not be exactly where you think you are. And they've simulated this. They've simulated degradation of satellites dependent where you are flying in the world. That's an insane level of detail for something that is not study. Look at the wear and tear on these switches. This is real. getting outside. My concern about all of this, and I really want a study level. I had the PMDG years and years ago, which I found actually too complicated. Sometimes I just wanted to get in and fly. And you couldn't do that with the PMDG. I wanted something more like the Quality Wings. The first serious aeroplane I flew in X-Plane was the Quality Wings 146. The mini jumbo, as they called it, 4-engined aircraft. It was fantastic. It had lots of realism about it, but it wasn't over the top, so you could jump into it and fly. So again, the outside, you've got where there are chances for oil or fluid to leak, where there are scuff marks, where there are rain marks. This is all simulated. The detail here of the flaps and the air brakes, there's what I'm talking about. You see the scuff mark there, the leak, the oil stains, rivets. I saw a comment about rivet counters. And has it got all the rivets in the right place? Not only does this have all the rivets in the right place and the screws, if you were to zoom in onto some of the screws and the screw heads in here, the screw heads aren't all lined up in the same direction. They're all lined up slightly differently. Stupid. There's the light bleed I was talking about. The light bleed that you see on the side of the displays. This really does look an amazing aircraft. I just love it. My concern was, what is this going to do to the frame rates? So they've actually released some side-by-side shots. So here we see the ASBO A320 with the settings high, 34.4, which is about what I'm getting, and when I'm in VR with my settings on medium or low in VR, I'm getting around 22 to 25 for most of the time. Not over central London for some unknown reason, but I don't fly over central London very often. So that's 34.4 in the ASBO. Now, when you put all the stuff that fly-by-wire does, it drops it down to 26.7. And yes, in VR, that does cause stutters. It causes quite a few stutters. I'm quite often falling down below 20, down to 19. It's a waste of time using ASW in Oculus or reprojection. It just doesn't help, because you can't maintain anything like the frame rate needed. So yes, I get stutters. So 26.7. So what about the Fenix? Wow. 32. This is close. This is really close to the ASBO. But it isn't the ASBO. It isn't the fly-by-wire. It's better than both of those. So they're not calling this study level. They're calling it advanced. There are 120... No, sorry. Yeah. About 120 different failures. So you can experience failures mid-flight. It does have fair wear and tear, and it remembers it. So the longer you fly it, the more it's going to wear. I just can't wait to see this. I've got no idea when it's coming out yet. They call it alpha stage, but there are a couple of videos online already of them landing the aircraft, and yes, study level A320, or near study level. I shouldn't call it study level because they're not calling it, and it's not fit for a professional simulator, so you can clock up your training on it as a professional pilot. But boy, this is... I just can't wait to see it. Just can't wait to see it. So that was it. Once again, apologies for last week. Well, I don't apologise. I had to do it. I had to watch. My wife would never have forgiven me if I hadn't watched the football last week. So we're back on track now. I'll be back next week with more of the same. I've got some more videos coming online for the Stream Deck. Most of the Stream Deck submissions on flightsim.to are for the Stream Deck XL, the very big one. If you want a smaller version, drop me a line, because I've done a couple of conversions for people. I think Elgato are missing something by not allowing you to create or do it yourself. So if you haven't got a Stream Deck XL, you should be able to load in a Stream Deck XL profile anyway and move the buttons around, even though you only own the 15 button one. But I'll talk about more of that on the Stream Deck. Yeah, that's it. So we're going to do some more live streaming. We did the shared cockpit about 4 weeks ago. That was a disaster. Well, it wasn't a disaster, but it didn't go very well. We're doing a world tour at the moment with the virtual airline that Rich and I fly for. So might invite you along to do the next leg of that. We are in Japan at the moment. We're doing around the world in short hops. It's about 40 flights. The longest one's 2 hours. I think next week's flight is only an hour and 10, hour and 15, so I might stream it. Until then, until next week, please, feedback always welcome. If the new microphone sounds good, fantastic. If it sounds bad, then I'll have to play around more. And until then, as usual, enjoy your flying and stay safe, and a very, very good night to you. Bye.